it became extremely clear right away that I can rent a brand new container of your choice between 35 to 65% less than what it's currently costing you to use the Blue Wrap.
Beyond Clean offers a creative look into the inner workings of the healthcare industry committed to getting it right. Every instrument, every time. Join us every week as we explore the hidden world of one of the most important aspects of safe surgical care. And now your hosts, Hank Balch and Justin Poulin.
This week on Beyond Clean, we speak with Jay Hardingham, the founder of SPD Rentals. Throughout Jay's career, he has been both an entrepreneur and held senior-level sales and marketing leadership roles within the healthcare industry. He has also held the position of Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Case Medical, who manufactures rigid sterilization containers. This is where Jay became extremely passionate about improving patient outcomes, infection control, and process improvements throughout SPD departments across the country. So I'm just going to kick it right over to Hank. I'm really excited about this. I know, Hank, you had a chance to meet Jay in person. I've met Jay in person a couple of times, and this is a pretty new concept that I don't know that I've seen anywhere else.
That's right, Justin. I had the opportunity to meet Jay and get introduced to this concept at the National ISHM conference in Nashville last year, and he actually made it on my 2017 list of the best CS products from that conference. So it's been a long time coming to get this idea out in front of other sterile processing professionals, but I'm excited to do so today.
You know, I haven't had the chance to meet Jay, but just from hearing you guys talk about this product, I got to tell you, I'm really excited to try and learn more because this really sounds like something that is just almost too good to be true.
Well, we'll certainly find out here in the upcoming segments in speaking with Jay. But a reminder to everybody, you can follow Beyond Clean on Twitter at Beyond Clean Info, the Facebook page, Facebook.com/Beyond Clean Podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, LinkedIn.com/company/Beyond Clean. And that Instagram page that you hear us talk about, if you've got pictures that you want to submit anonymously, or if you want to look at the submissions we've received already, go to Instagram. We're there, Beyond Clean Podcast. And if you do have some pictures you want to submit for us to include, just send us an email to info@beyondclean.net. We'll be right back with Jay Hardingham. Joining us now is Jay Hardingham, the founder of SPD Rentals. And Jay, I know you've had a chance to talk with me. Actually, we've met in person, which is something I can't say about my fellow co-hosts here on the show. I haven't met Hank and Mike, but I have met you in person. And I think your concept is really intriguing, and I think our listeners will be, not only our listeners, but you know, all of us here on the show are very interested in learning some more.
Great. Well, listen, guys, thanks so much for having me on the show, and I'm really looking forward to some of the questions you might be asking and enlightening some of the folks in the SPD world about a brand new concept. I think everybody will have a fairly good interest in the program, so I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks again for having us on.
Well, why don't you just start us right at the beginning? Give us a background. What was the catalyst for the concept of SPD Rentals? And essentially what you're doing is purchasing the containers for the hospital, but instead of them having to lay out the capital, you're doing that and putting them on a rental program. But before we get into sort of the details of the program, tell us, how did you come up with the idea? What set you down this path?
Right. Well, that's a really great question. And you know what? I'm just so excited about it. Really, the way it kind of came about was I was actually Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a manufacturer of sterilization containers. And part of my role was to engage with our sales organization around the country and meet with SPD managers and talk to them about our product, which we had just a fantastic product. But one of the things that I kept hearing over and over again, one common theme was, yeah, Jay, we love the container. We would really, really love to have more containers. But there's really one thing that's holding us back, and that is that they didn't have the capital budget set aside for the containers. It just seems that they didn't have that fund set aside for the SPD department, and those funds are being allocated for other capital equipment, which in the eyes of the CEO and CFO were going to be more of a capital equipment that would return on investment. And one of the things that they don't often have an opportunity to do is really look into the SPD department and realize that there is an opportunity for a return on their investment. So therefore, most of the SPD folks just didn't have that budget available to them. And I think you guys realize that and have seen it in the past as well.
So, Jay, I'm kind of curious, where did you even come up with the idea for this product?
Sure, Mike, that's a great question. My background actually comes out of finance, and it just dawned on me that, gosh, this would be a great solution to be able to put together a rental program or a leasing program. Years ago, I had started a leasing business while I was working for Mercedes-Benz. I had actually worked on a project for Mercedes-Benz, looking and investigating the possibility of starting a leasing division for them. And when doing so, the profile of the folks that were the Mercedes-Benz customers were either a doctor, a lawyer, attorney, a business owner, and they were looking to conserve their capital, invest it in their business, and possibly renting or leasing an automobile. And it gave them an opportunity to conserve their capital, keep it in their business, and they could rent the car for $350 a month or whatever it was. And at the end of the lease, they would have numerous options. They could buy it at the end, or they could turn it back in. So I simply started a new program, a leasing program, on my own, because at that point, Mercedes-Benz decided not to move forward with the program. And I started my own leasing business, and it absolutely grew. And we put a leasing program in every Mercedes-Benz dealership and every Porsche dealership, and it just was fantastic. The dealerships that embraced the program doubled and tripled their sales. So the same concept I have now applied to the rental business for the sterilization containers.
So, Jay, this is Hank. I'm glad my wife is not listening to this podcast, because she would be on me to trade in the Kia and start leasing a Mercedes after that. But, I want to go back to what you said earlier about the challenges of capital purchasing in general. And as a sterile processing leader, that is a real reality. And even at the end of my current fiscal year now, I'm in the thick of it. I know how challenging it can be to make those arguments, number one, and we can get to that later. But then also, even getting it on the list, getting it approved in that context, if your current practices are working, you still have to get over that hump of, okay, if they're working, then what's the argument to say that we need this, wide-scale conversion? Can you go into a little bit more of how this company and this concept in particular has helped these leaders overcome that challenge?
One of the things that we talk about is from an environmental standpoint. When we look at the way you're processing the sets today, from an environmental standpoint, the hospitals are spending a lot of money on that blue wrap, and it can't be used a second time. It's a single-use item, and once it's used, where does it go? You're spending good money on it. It's now going directly into the landfill. And unfortunately, this material is made out of a polypropylene number 5 material, which can last up to 200 years before it even starts to degrade in the landfill. There's a real reason to take a hard look at the utilization of the blue wrap. In addition to that part of it, there's a cost involved in handling it. Once the use is up in the OR, somebody's got to handle it and transport it, and so there's a cost involved in transporting that material into the landfill. From a cost perspective there's certainly a component. Number two, obviously, there's a cost involved whenever there may be a hole, rip, or tear in the blue wrap, and that set needs to be reprocessed. On average, on a national average, the hospitals are experiencing, ORs are experiencing between 5 to 10% of the time there's a rip, tear, snag in that blue wrap, which is causing that set to be reworked. And there's definitely a direct cost involved in that as well. You know, a lot of the hospitals, I've been getting figures back anywhere between $58 to $125 a minute, and I think you guys could probably tell me better as to exactly how long it takes to reprocess a set. What we've also done to measure, going back to your point, Hank, is, you know, how do you measure that in respect to building a business case and taking these components of the cost of utilizing the blue wrap, and how do we build a business case for the CEO or the CFO or the OR manager, who may also have the financial aspect of the budget in that regard. And so what we've done is we've actually built a calculator, which we have online, which we can plug in all the different variables, the number of times, how many sets you would like, how many times they're being processed per week, how many times you're experiencing a delay in the OR, and of course all the other material that goes into utilizing the blue wrap, including the cost of the autoclave tape and corner protectors and so forth. And our calculator will then give you a PDF analysis of what the cost savings would be, which can be fairly significant.
Yeah, I can only imagine, and I know you and I have sat down and looked at that calculator, but you asked kind of an important question there, which was how much time does it take to reprocess a set? And there's two considerations, right, Mike? There's it's a certain amount of time if you're going to do the full process. Then there's the whole immediate use sterilization, which everybody wants to get rid of, where it's quicker, but then you're running the risk of infection concerns. So maybe, Mike, you can illuminate that a little bit too.
There's also other considerations that even if you say let's process it the way that it's supposed to be processed and it's wrapped, wraps are more likely to be contaminated through handling. So there's a lot going on there. But I got to ask, Jay, so if I'm interested in this project, because we've all been in the situation where we say, well, we would really love to, containerize. We go to our administration. We say, administration, we want to, spend this money. And the administrators just kind of look at it and say, man, you want me to spend $300 on a container when I can buy a wrap for like $3. How do you help people make that argument?
One of the things I did was when I first got involved with this and really sat down and really started to think through it from a financial standpoint, I thought, okay, let me build this calculator. Let me take a look at all the costs that are involved in, using the blue wrap. And once I did that and went back to my financial roots and looked at what it would cost to put together a leasing program, it became extremely clear right away that I can rent a brand new container of your choice between 35 to 65% less than what it's currently costing you to use the blue wrap. And that's really when it really dawned on me, boy, this calculator is going to be very, very important to be able to demonstrate that, because that's the big challenge. A lot of folks in SPD, they want it, but how do you demonstrate it? This tool really gives you that capability of putting in all the numbers, and then it will very easily put together a cost savings based on our program. And just as a quick example, we just did an assessment at a hospital in New York City where they need another little over 1,000 containers. We ran this program, we ran through the calculator, and we really looked at, let's be a little conservative here, and we validated all the numbers, and we said, okay, we're probably experiencing maybe 5 holes a week and delays in the OR. And as a result, we're actually going to be saving them over a 6-year period, $5.2 million, which is huge. Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely huge.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the neat thing is that money is already put aside. It's already in their operational budget. So in other words, they were already spending the money on the autoclave tape, the corner protectors, and the sheets themselves. And if you take just those costs alone, there's just a huge, huge savings.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but those numbers are throwing out are really just kind of blowing my mind. So you're saying that, almost off the bat, you're able to save a pretty significant amount of money, and as far as the hospital's, regular running budget is concerned, they're not really feeling a thing.
No,
and
that's correct.
That's incredible. So I got to ask the obvious question, which is, unless this is a charity, I'm assuming you're making money somehow. So how does that work?
Well, here's the interesting part is at the end of the lease, at the end of the rental period, we give them a number of options. And basically what we're doing is we're capitalizing the initial equipment. We are building a small profit in that rental fee, on the monthly rental fee. But also at the end of the rental fee, at the end of the rental agreement, you do have several options. And one of those options is to extend the rental agreement. And that's really where we start to make a little bit of money, to be honest with you. It's a program that is funded. We do have very large banks that are helping to fund this project with us. We've aligned with them. And again, coming out of the financial arena years ago, I do have those resources, and we were able to pull those together and put together a very, very nice competitive program. So,
wow, my mind is blown right now.
So, Jay, here's something, too, I wanted to kind of throw at you and get your take on with this model. Let's say you're saving, you just mentioned $5.2 million for this hospital. I know we don't know the exact size, but if anybody wants to make a quick comparison, you kind of quantified that around 1,000 containers, correct? So that gives people a frame of reference that I think they can utilize. But so $5.2 million, are you limited to containers when you're saving that kind of money, or are you willing to build in, again, other products that would maybe require some capital investment, or maybe a service that requires an upfront capital investment and then maybe a service fee on an ongoing basis, anything like that? Because what you just said to Mike was so impressive to him was, hey, they don't feel anything. They're just making this shift. The containers come in and away you go, and now you have this cost savings. We all know finding money in SPD to get spent on necessary improvements is pretty hard to come by. Are you limited to containers, or can you expand that lease or rental program?
Yeah, actually, we can absolutely do that. In this particular case, also, we're also looking at possibly including some shelving along with this. I mean, we don't have those in this particular savings model, but we can also include shelving. We can include case carts. We can include a tracking system if you're interested in a tracking system. We can do a complete bundle. So if you have other capital equipment, the sterilizer, even, we can bundle that all together. And of course, the cost savings isn't going to be that 60% cost or 70% cost savings. It's going to come down a little bit, but we can fund those other items within the cost savings that we can deliver based on what it's currently costing you to use that blue route.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. We're going to come back. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper into the weeds with workflow. Maybe we'll even talk a little bit more about the types of other projects, or like you just mentioned, shelving and tracking systems, and how that can build a real holistic approach to this program. We're back with Jay Hardingham, the founder of SPD Rentals. Jay, I got to tell you, we did take a quick break in between the segments, and everybody just started thinking a lot bigger picture. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Hank.
Yeah, so Jay, we've been talking sterile processing here, the first segment, but through all of it, I'm thinking just as a healthcare leader in general, one of the biggest things that slows down progress in a number of departments, we'll just talk operating room, is the inability to get capital items approved and in the workflow. And oftentimes these are shared capital items, even with the sterile processing. So we may be waiting on instrument trays, but they actually need the unit in the room to make it happen. Is there any thought to expanding this concept outside of the walls of sterile processing?
Absolutely. We can take our financial resources and rental concept and apply it to almost any type of capital equipment and fund that within the project. So, sure, we can do, I've been asked about closed case cards or other equipment for the OR. We can do all of that equipment and kind of do like a total bundle package. I've been asked about doing ultrasonic equipment. We can certainly do that as well, and tracking systems like we had mentioned earlier. If we do need more storage, we can do that. So we can definitely expand this program into other departments as well.
So for those leaders out there who are interested in a Da Vinci robot, we'll give them your contact information to follow up with. No, but on a more serious note, in all of this, we're going to get a little more practical in this segment to just say, how would this work on the ground level? Anytime you're doing mass conversion, we'll stick a little more specifically with the rigid containers. There is going to be an impact to sterile processing workflow. From a sterile processing leader's perspective, what would you see those being?
Let's just say we're working in extremes here. So we're going from 100% wrapped to 100% containerized. You're talking about all of a sudden you're used to only receiving in your decontamination, just the instruments and just the instrument sets, whereas when you convert, you're going to get instrument sets plus the containers that they're in, which means you have to clean them too. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider. You're probably going to have to start utilizing cart wash pretty significantly, and if you don't have a cart wash, that means that you're going to start using more of your instrument washers for the sake of washing rigid containers, which increases your chemicals. And there's quite a few things that have to be considered in the whole project.
And that's where some of those cost savings come in. And, frankly, just good planning on the front end to know if we're going to have more rigid containers coming through the workflow. Well, I should probably add a rack in the prep and pack area to stage them. It also means it will impact your sterile storage area, whereas before, oftentimes, if you walk into sterile storage, you will see some non-compliant storage happening for some blue wrap, which many of their IFUs say that you should not be stacking trays, but I can't tell you the last department that I walked in where there wasn't some kind of stacking of blue instrument wrap happening. But with that conversion, I think it's just important to get out there to the audience that, yes, there's a lot of opportunity here to get equipment and capital needs in quicker. But if you want to do that correctly and have a workflow that's not going to be too interrupted, it is important to think through the entire workflow what it's going to look like from decontam all the way up through sterile storage. But the impact not only going to be to a positive sterile processing budget and a change to maybe some of the sterile processing workflow, but you're also going to see an impact in the operating room, Jay. And this is where you really start seeing maybe the value that's not as immeasurable. There's some cost of an OR minute in terms of case delay studies out there. And obviously there is cost associated to canceled cases, but that's really where you start seeing a lot of non-measurable but more cultural and process impact to a concept like this, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. One of the things that really came up when we first launched this program, and we actually did a soft launch out in California, and when we started moving across the country, meeting with some very large IDN and systems. And one of the things that we came across was when we met with SPD leaders and also the OR leaders were that you really need to take into consideration your calculator, which we didn't have in initially, was those costs exactly. The number of holes and rips and number of times they have to reprocess those sets due to the tears or rips really is a factor that needs to be put into the calculator. So we did that in the new one. We built that in, and that is a huge impact that we can achieve in reducing those numbers. The other thing, too, that we mentioned was the cost of perhaps the shelving, additional shelving. But when you talked about stacking of the blue wrap, if we want to go back to that for a second, very often people will say, we're stacking 2 and 3 on top of each other, and of course we're experiencing holes, but we also don't necessarily have the room. But when you actually look at the wrapped set, and then you take in consideration, maybe another inch or 2 space, you may actually have the room already, because the sets are there, they're taking up space. It's just a little bit more space. It's not that much more space. And then obviously you can stack it, and it's acceptable to stack the container. So you kind of alleviate those issues in regards to, finding that extra space. And again, we can kind of bundle the shelving in if there's some additional shelving and if they have storage and areas for that as well.
Jay, I was first introduced to this concept. I think we first met at the National ISHM conference in Nashville this past year. And one of the things that blew me away was the container repair conversation, because I met you and we started talking about the rental ideas. And my first question, because it was at the top of my to-do list at my department back home, was how are these containers being repaired? And depending on the philosophy of a sterile processing leader, sometimes there are some specific preventative maintenance schedules that they would want to hold a container to, that if they're leasing the container under some kind of external agreement like this, could have an impact to that. So could you walk through maybe your concept or philosophy for repair so that the audience can kind of get a perspective of what that would look like?
We've actually contracted with one of the major repair service companies, and we can put in place a program where we can look at the containers on an annual basis and then do a complete evaluation in regards to how they're holding up, or if there's a seal that needs to be replaced and so forth. We do place a autoclavable barcode label on all of our containers so we can quickly identify which containers belong to SPD Rentals versus which are already owned by the house. In doing so, we can quickly come in and do an analysis and scan each one, and we keep a record of what's been done to the containers. If there's been any repair work that needs to take place and has been done, we have a full database with all of that information. And again, Hank, I'm not sure if we mentioned this before, but one of the hospitals I recently met with has a contract with one of the major repair companies, and they were kind of in jeopardy and being challenged by senior management whether it was worthwhile keeping that contract in place or not, because they didn't feel as though it was being fully utilized, and asked, can I have my repair company repair your containers? And the answer to that was yes, you can definitely have that done. It's perfectly fine, and we can validate that it was done properly. And some of the manufacturers, the contract and the maintenance contract is obviously passed through and will be supported by the manufacturer as well. So in any case, we can do the repair work or make arrangements for that as well.
Excellent. So, Jay, I got to tell you, one thing that has always kind of struck me as strange in the OR is that some of your most vulnerable and critical equipment and instrumentation that is used for some of your highest risk cases, and primarily I'm talking about like orthopedic trauma, those are the sets that are almost universally wrapped when you go into a hospital. Those are heavier sets. You're just asking for trouble. Implants are one of those things where you're not supposed to IUSS anything, but you're especially not supposed to IUSS an implant, and yet they're all wrapped when it happens. I'm curious, has there been any partnership with any of the, these orthopedic manufacturers to perhaps partner with them to get those instruments into rigid containers?
That's a really great question. In fact, I was just out at one of our customers out in Long Island, and that was one of their major concerns. And we're actually working on a program right now to move all their loaner sets into containers. And they actually went back to the manufacturers of the orthopedic sets and pleaded with them and tried to negotiate the best they could to have the manufacturers pay for the containers, because it is a big issue. These sets are coming in, they're heavy, and you're wrapping them, and there's a very, very good possibility that those sets can be compromised. And they went back and, like I said, negotiated the best they could, and the answer from the manufacturers were, no, we're not going to buy them. We're not going to purchase them. So, but we were able to build a really good case, and no pun intended, for them to go back to senior management and to be able to provide loaner sets for the manufacturers. And actually, through the rental program, we can save them about 40% to 50% on what it's currently costing them to wrap, just in the material to wrap those containers. To answer your further question, no, we have not put together any program as of yet directly with the manufacturers, although I think that would be a great idea and something to pursue.
Jay, walk us through what the end of a lease of containers would look like. I know you mentioned offhand earlier that there would be an option to continue the lease or just purchase outright, but because this is such a new concept probably for a lot of folks, it'd be good to go into a little more detail on what that would be.
The rental program, we actually call it the Flex Rental Sterilization Program. And the reason why we call it Flex is because we do give you a lot of flexibility at the end of the lease term to decide what you want to do. And one of the things that you can do is you can keep the equipment in place, and at that point, after the 3-year period, we will reduce the rental fee by 50%. Again, we'll reduce it by 50%, and you can keep that equipment in service for as long as you want to. The other option is to return the equipment. You can return it and go back to using Blue Wrap if that's what you decide you want to do. You can certainly do that. The other option would be to purchase the equipment, and you can purchase it between 35% or 45% of the original acquisition costs. And everything is totally transparent. You will see exactly what we pay from the manufacturer for that equipment, and you will have the option to buy it between 35 to 45%. And the reason why I say that and not say it's for $1 or something else, this is set up as a strictly a rental program, and not to be later construed or thought of or handled on your books as a purchase, as a capital equipment purchase. So you do have to have that open-ended value as part of the rental program. The other option would be to turn the equipment back, and you can replace it with new equipment. And this is really kind of interesting, is that, I'm sure there's somebody out there right now working in their garage or working in their laboratory and coming up with the next latest and greatest container. You just never know what someone's working on. It could be the cube, it could be something else. We really don't know. But this gives you the flexibility of updating your technology, doing a technology refresh, just like you would if you had purchased a new computer 3 years ago. The technology is starting to change, not as rapidly as some other technologies, but there are people working on things right now. So this will give you that flexibility and opportunity to return that equipment and then refresh it with brand new equipment of your choice.
So yeah, Jay, that's something that I don't know if it came out clearly in the first segment, but there's not a particular manufacturer that you're working with. It is really up to the customer themselves to decide what brand of container or shelving or what have you that they're wanting to convert to. Is that right?
That's correct. We're totally agnostic. It really doesn't make any difference to us which container manufacturer that you would like to to implement. It really doesn't matter. We love the fact that we like the container program. We like the way the containers streamline the process, getting away from the blue wrap, and, increasing the efficiency of the OR. We just think it's a really great program. And most of the manufacturers today, all of them actually have really, really great products. So it's just a matter of personal choice, really.
Just so the folks know, I know SPD Rentals has not been around for too long yet, but I saw you at the ISHM convention last year. Where are you planning to be for 2018? Are you going to be at AORN? Are you going to be back at ISHM next year in Phoenix? What's the roadmap, I guess, for you for this next year?
We are definitely planning on being at AORN and ISHM again this year. We were really surprised and pleasantly surprised with the response that we got from the show at ISHM. I almost didn't attend because we were so new to the market yet. And sharing a booth with another manufacturer and being able to show our product and program, the reception was just absolutely outstanding. The comments I kept hearing over and over again were, this is just a brilliant program. We love the concept all the way around. When can we get together? To answer that, we now have 25 reps around the country introducing the programs to different hospitals, and the reception has just been outstanding. And yes, we are absolutely looking forward to attending AORN and ISHM again this year.
I'm not surprised you've received such positive feedback. I mean, seriously, the savings that you just described to us, the ability to bring additional process improvements to the solution, those are all things that I think SPD's been looking for a long time. And we didn't dive into this topic, and we'll save it for another day, but essentially it's how do you make that case to the C-suite? I know we dabbled in it a little bit in the first segment, but how do you make that case to the C-suite for them to spend more money in a healthcare environment that is trying to contract costs on a daily basis? And so here's a situation where there's money, as you mentioned, already in the operational budget. There can be a cost shifting, and there can be process improvements built into that. That, to me, is at least a discussion worth having at any facility that's using a significant amount of wrap. And again, there's another side of this discussion as well. But for today's discussion, there's an opportunity there. So I just want to say, Jay, I really appreciate your innovative approach here, coming up with a solution that might provide an opportunity for some of our SPD managers who may be budget handcuffed to look at additional options.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you guys tonight and go through the program. I would certainly welcome and look forward to hearing from SPD folks around the country, and love to engage with you and help out any way I can.
That was Jay Hardingham, the founder of SPD Rentals. And guys, I'll tell you, I think this is a pretty interesting idea, and the savings are, based on his calculator, pretty impressive. So, Mike, I think I'll throw it to you at first. I mean, I'm sure you've got at least 10 things on your list that you'd like to see upgraded or brought into the department to improve your processes, and a solution like this could certainly help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said it during the interview, but I'll say it again. Like, my mind is really blown. I don't know of a single SPD in the country who is just flush with cash and can just buy whatever they want. But the idea of being able to get, necessary upgrades without actually even putting a dent in capital and just getting it all from operations budget is just, that's just amazing.
All I got to say, guys, is if y'all see me pull up in a new Mercedes, you're going to know what happened.
Yeah, you're working for SPD Rentals.
Well, no, I took this interview to heart, Justin, and I realized that there are innovative ways to approach a budget and then still get what your department needs. And, this is one solution out there in a sea of solutions, but it is a new solution. It's creative, and it gives these leaders tools, just like Mike said, to get the true equipment that's needed, the true conversion that's needed, but also not have to deal with the complete hassle of a capital request. So hopefully folks benefit in our audience from this show, but also I hope some of the vendors out there are inspired to think outside the box and continue to give us new great solutions to tackle existing problems.
that's going to do it for this week's show. As a reminder, you can support Beyond Clean by subscribing on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd certainly appreciate a rating and a review. Your feedback is important to the show. And if you do have any topics that you'd like us to cover on a future episode, if you're interested in being a guest, or if you'd like to share a picture anonymously of the bioburden or different cleaning challenges in your department on our Instagram page, just send us an email to info@beyondclean.net. And on behalf of Hank, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond Clean.